Welcome to another episode of Inspirational Leaders. I'm your host, Kevin Pickett, partner with Sales Integrity. We help sales professionals, leaders, and organizations really just do two things. That's increase sales and earn more money. We do that through our sales coaching and sales recruiting services. Today, I'm excited to have Barry Saltzman with the Saltzman Enterprise Group. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Kevin.
Barry and I have actually known each other for, I think I was counting it on the way in, as 10 years. We met back in over 10 years ago in April of 2004. And Barry's been a great mentor of mine over the years, and I know this is going to be an exciting show today. He always has some great stories. He always has some really good information, so pay attention because this is one you want to get. Barry, before we jump into the leadership stuff today, tell us a little bit about your company and kind of your background.
So my business, Kevin, is really designed to be a boutique advisory and consulting firm. My goal is to help individuals and businesses reach their full potential. So my passion is helping people grow. My passion is helping people do things they've never done before. So when I left the big industry to do my own stuff, I wanted to, be the person on the other side of the table, leveraging all of my experience and skills and be a trusted, partner to my clients.
So your entire career has spanned from individual sales contributor to CEO of companies before, right? I mean, tell us a little bit about kind of your background and how you grew up in the sales world.
Yeah, so my background there's really three components to my background. I spent about a third of my career from a services professional perspective, always responsible for selling services. I spent another third actually being VP of sales in a global capacity, selling, managing salespeople, managing sales professionals. I spent a third of my career being president and CEO, which ultimately is a sales job as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. That's great. So the focus of our shows is really kind of talking about leadership, inspirational leaders, and really focusing in that kind of sales niche. So before we jump into some of that stuff, how would you define leadership?
Leadership to me is the person that's willing to go into the fire before they ask the team to go into the fire. Leadership is about, leading by example, showing people that you're willing to do it, and guiding them through the process. Whereas the opposite of leadership is the person that sits in their office and tells the people on the front line to run into the fire. So you've got to lead by example, do it first, show them how to do it, coach them through the process.
Throughout your career, have you had any inspirational leaders that you were mentored by and that you looked up to?
Throughout my my 29, 30 years of experience, I've had three people that have resonated from a leadership perspective, all of them being totally different in personality, but very inspirational.
You had talked about inspirational leaders. Give me some examples of really maybe three inspirational leaders in your lifetime.
Oh, great question, Kevin. So over the last 29, 30 years, there's three people that absolutely stand out. The first one was my first inspirational leader. When I was very young, I was in my late 20s working in New York. He was a Harvard MBA, came out of IBM, extremely structured. Everything was process.
Sure.
So whenever I sat down with him, it was always walk me through the process. And he didn't have much of a personality, but it was all about process. And he got me to think in terms of a process, thinking through the steps of how to get things done. One night in New Jersey, I sat with him and I tried to impress him with my understanding of the outsourcing business. I spent 2 hours explaining the sales process. And at the end of the conversation, he said, now I know and sells this. It's too complicated.
Sure.
He got me to think about process. So I became more process oriented. I leveraged his Harvard MBA stuff into my personality. After he moved up in the company, the next person that came into my life was another gentleman, total opposite personality, couldn't care about process. It was all about people. Mm-hmm. He kept asking me how I felt. Well, the first guy never asked how I felt. He asked me what the process was.
Sure.
Then it became all about people. So I got to learn about how do you care about people, how do you get to know people, how do you trust people, and people will work hard for you if they like you and they trust you.
Sure.
So I had the process piece and I had the people piece. So I put those two together. About 8, 9 years later, I went to another company and I got to work for a gentleman who ran South America for IBM. He was from Europe, so he was not an American, very different culture. And what I learned from him was it was all about accountability. And I was managing 1,800 people, $750 billion of revenue. And he said to me, here's what you do every day. You inspect what your people are doing. When you're done inspecting, you inspect them again, and then you inspect them a third time. Inspect, inspect, inspect. What did I learn from that? Is just keep asking questions, keep understanding what people are doing. So there's a process to do things, there are people that do things, and then if you inspect the people in the process. So those three pieces were things that I learned from three different leaders. And at the time, I don't know that I enjoyed working for all of them at those moments, but now that I can look back, it was just invaluable experience from three different people that helped me become who I am today.
It's interesting. Those are all three kind of different areas of advice, and it seemed like they all meld well together. So that was really good information.
Today I can see the value of it. At the time, it probably didn't make sense to me.
I think that happens a lot of times in our life. It takes reflection to get us back into that moment. So great. Those are some great examples. What was your first leadership experience, whether as a kid or young adult, or from that standpoint? My guess is it was way back then.
Yeah, way back then, many years ago. My dad was a CPA. He had his own private practice, and he decided to purchase a business that was in the video game industry. If you remember Atari, it was one of the first video games. So he decided to start this business, and he asked me to start working for him. And at the time, I was about 13, 14 years old. So I had to, take a leadership role and actually start doing things and following instructions and showing other people how to do it. So it was an interesting experience being very, very young and learning how to become a leader.
Sure. So as you grew up, and you said you were in a lot of different parts of your careers in service and sales and stuff, from a leadership standpoint, when did you get your first opportunity in more of a sales leadership role?
Yeah, so I started my career as a technical engineer selling local area networks to the banks in New York City. And I was with a company that was relatively small. We got acquired. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden one day my boss came up to me and said, good news and bad news. The good news is we just got acquired and I'm no longer going to be working for the company. Congratulations, you're now going to go into a supervisory role. So all of a sudden I became a supervisor of people like myself.
Sure.
And then I had to quickly learn how to be a leader.
So how did you do that?
It was very painful at first because I tried to treat them in a way that was an individual contributor type way, and then what I realized was I have to take a step back and look at, I'm now managing people. They're not all going to be like myself, so I have to get to know the people, understand their personalities, but try to drive them to a common goal and vision. So it took a lot of it was very painful in the beginning.
Sure.
But over time I realized that not everyone is Barry Saltzman. In fact, I'm the only Barry Saltzman on the planet that's like me. Everyone is different. I have to quickly learn to communicate to people in a way that works for them.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think a lot of times when you get your first sales management position, you expect everybody to be you. And sometimes people don't realize that soon enough in that standpoint. So let's say I'm a new sales manager. Day one, what is the one bit of advice you would give me that make sure you do this from the start?
So the first thing I would say with passion today, Kevin, is if you're a new sales manager, go spend time and get to know your people. Trust gets earned.
Yep.
Right? Trust doesn't come because you have a name on your card that says sales manager or VP of sales. You have to earn trust with people. Mm-hmm. Get to know people, learn about their backgrounds, ask them what they do when they're not working, get them to trust you. Once they trust you, they'll typically listen to you. Don't go in there and think that you're CEO of the world and say you must do this because I say so.
Sure.
They might do it, but it's not sustainable.
Sure. No, that makes sense. So obviously we know each other very well, and you've shared a lot of stories over the years. You've got a great one about with the millionaire twice over sales story. Share that with the folks because I think that's a really inspirational thing for people that are individual contributors that you can still lead.
Yeah, great question. And you know this well because you're obviously a sales coach and you do a lot of sales coaching. So my best story ever is I had a gentleman twice, two separate companies, make $1 million in income selling different types of services. So many years ago, I went back to him. He lives in New Jersey now, and he wasn't smarter than anyone else. He wasn't more experienced than anyone else, but he was just more effective as being a sales professional. And what he did was he totally focused on the value to the customer. All he cared about was the customer. He learned as much as he can about the customer. So while all the other reps were out having, happy hour on Friday and talking at the coffee machine, all he was doing was learning about his customers and providing value to his customers. And he just did an unbelievable job every single day preparing and executing on his plan and not getting caught up in all the other distractions that salespeople typically do. And to do it twice on a total different company, total different set of services was pretty amazing.
Yeah, and as you know, with our coaching program, Barry's a certified and licensed coach with us, and really the basis of our program is being prepared, being organized, and being productive. And I think a lot of people sometimes think it's a little bit more difficult or challenging than it is. At the end of the day, you got a simple solution that you got to run. And it sounds like he did that twice over, which is nice.
Yeah, and back in the day, Kevin, this goes back probably to the late '80s, early '90s. The tools that are available to sales professionals today didn't exist then. LinkedIn didn't exist. The internet didn't really exist like it does today. He actually paid money for information to be sent to him to tell him what was going on within his customers. So he actually paid money to learn more about his customers so that he could add value, whereas today, Google, type in a few words,
Sure.
and it's there.
Yeah, it's all there for you. So, as in your coaching services, you coach a lot of sales managers, VPs of sales, business owners. What are some of the challenges that they're facing today that you're seeing?
Well, the challenge is that, as you said earlier, being a manager is not the same as being an individual contributor. So as a manager, you've got to, do what's right for your company, which is to get them to sell more, but also do what's right for your people to get them to grow and expand. So it's that constant balance of how do I get my people to do more, but do it in a way that the company wants. So a lot of these managers just have never been professionally trained.
Mm-hmm.
They're great salespeople, but now they're dealing with 12 different personalities. It's a total different set of skills that are needed.
So I always say it's like managing chaos. At the end of the day, when you've got people that are different in today's world where feelings are a little bit more involved than they were probably, I know when I was growing up in sales, that nobody really cared about that kind of stuff. From a leadership standpoint, I always say when I coach, don't own your people's problems at the end of the day, right? How do you separate that? So, being a good leader and being an inspirational leader, how would you recommend people separate those types of things? Because I think salespeople do a good job making you feel guilty about their personal situations.
Yeah, it's hard. What I try to do is sit down with the person and say, hey, Kevin, let's talk about our goals. What are we trying to get to? And try to get the person to come up with a plan to get there. If they do it, they own it.
Mm-hmm.
If they come up with a plan that you don't think will work, then you have to kind of finesse them to think differently. But, when you're a leader, it's all about the individual winning.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about me being the star anymore. I've got to get you to be the star, so I want you to own it.
Sure.
I want you to take responsibility for it. If I tell you what to do, you're probably not going to listen. So it's really getting the individual to think through a plan, get them to own the plan, and coach them and guide them through the plan. It's almost like being a parent.
Mm-hmm.
As a parent, there's a thing called tough love.
Sure.
Think of your employees in a similar way, where you've got to provide them with the mentorship, the leadership, and when things don't go in the direction that you like, then you got to come in and provide the tough love.
Sure. So we're at the point in our show where we're going to do our rapid fire segment. If you've seen the last show, what we typically do is I'll throw out a word or a phrase, and then, as a sales manager or sales leader, you always have to be quick on your feet anyway. So kind of what's the first thing that would come to your mind as far as how you would inspire that particular individual or that situation? You ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right. So first one, underperformer.
Underperformer, why? Root cause. Why are they not performing? Understanding the specific issues, not trying to think that I know the answer without getting into the facts. So if someone's not performing, why are they not performing? What's the root cause? What can we do to fix it quickly?
That's great. On the opposite end, top achiever.
Root cause. Why are they top achiever? What are they doing well? What
Sure.
What are they doing different than the rest of the team? Best practices. Leveraging what they're doing, gaining an understanding of why are they successful. They're not successful by accident. They're doing something right.
Sure. A seasoned senior rep. How would you motivate them?
To get to know them and to see what's really important to them in terms of next step. Are they looking to make more money? Are they looking to move into management? Try to get them to be a mentor and a guide to the younger people. Younger salespeople tend to listen more to the senior successful reps than to management.
Sure. And on that end, newbie, somebody brand new out of college, first sales job.
First sales job would be, once again, getting to know them and putting them on a path that could be successful and matching them up to someone in the organization that could be compatible to them. So finding a senior rep or finding a successful person that could take them under their wing and kind of be their mentor guide.
Sure. And finally, somebody struggling with their backhand in tennis.
I have a very good coach in Crystal Lake, and practice.
Barry's an avid tennis player. He's got a lot of great examples that tie into that. I really appreciate the time today. This was a lot of fun. There's absolutely some good information here. I hope you take that down and utilize it in your own careers. Again, thank you very much for another episode of Inspirational Leaders. We look forward to seeing you at the next one.